Need a motion for approval?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
There's a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye.
I have a quick question. I don't think I have the agenda. This is Adrian. Where is the agenda?
Carrie, I didn't find the agenda either. I had to have Christy send it to me this morning. Can you send it out to everybody real quick?
I sure can. It's in the folder. I don't know.
In the folder, wasn't it?
No, I couldn't find it.
I'll share it with you. Okay.
All right, agenda item 5529, approve the fiscal year 2021 budget for publication. Carrie, was there any comments on the budget?
I was going to say, we talked with Verl Peter from the State Department, and he was very pleased with what it looked like. He gave us a couple of suggestions. One of the things, the only thing he had us change was he had us put more of the money that we were spending for at risk, just to make sure that we accounted for it through the at risk fund. And that's K-12 at risk. So we've spent between 500 and 700,000 over the last 2 years. And we had about 500 in there. And he said, you will spend more than that on the at-risk students. So go ahead and include them, or include more money in there. And so we made a bigger transfer over there from general fund. But other than that, he said it looked great. The one thing that the taxpayers will want to know is what's the mill levy. And so again, the mill levy is going to be reduced again it's going to be 34.750, which is has to be one of the lowest in the state. So I think that's good as well.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions, board members? All right, I'll entertain a motion for approval of the budget for publication.
Motion approved, the agenda. Second.
There's the motion, the second on the floor. Christy, are you able to tell who's making those motions?
No, I can't hear him.
Okay, Carrie, you're gonna have to tell us who's doing what. We can't hear anything.
Jody made the motion and John seconded.
Thank you.
Motion is second on the floor. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Agenda item 5530, discussion of reopening task force. Carrie, do you have
Okay.
this order you want to?
Well, I want to start off. By saying what I have gotten really good at is, yes, that is a good question, and I don't know,
We didn't hear
because
the question.
I'm sorry.
What question are you referencing?
I'm referencing everything that anybody asks me. It's
Oh,
yes,
okay.
good question, and I don't know, because that's the way it is. We are starting to answer questions, and we're starting to move forward with the details of how we're going to make things work, and within the guidelines and the framework that we're developing. What I am hopeful for today is to give you an idea of the base plan, give you an idea, recommendations on start date and those kind of things, and give you an idea of what that will look like. And then get some questions answered from you on what your feelings are, so that as we move forward, that will frame more of the decisions that we make going forward. What I would like to do is I would like to get the base plan approval and calendar approval today, with the idea that we could share it out with the staff this afternoon. And then with starting on Monday, we would be able to start to share that plan out with parents, and then probably do something virtual like YouTube, have Mark be there where people could ask questions during it, and we could try and answer some of those questions as well. And then we would be able to, on Tuesday, open up for enrollment. Enrollment will be important as we move forward because we need to know if students will be in a remote setting or if they will be in the face-to-face school setting, and how many students that will change a lot of the decisions that we make. So I'd like to start with the calendar proposal this is from the board of it, or from the administrative team. I have set it out to the calendar committee, and they have obviously not had time to get it out to everyone, but let me see if I can just show it up here. Okay, so can you guys see it on when you're in there?
It just hasn't popped up yet. It acts like it's going in. There it is.
Okay, I just want to make sure before I start talking. Okay, so to begin with, we have enough days built into our schedule that we have so much flexibility that most districts do not have. So we would not have to, if the governor's executive order was followed to the letter, if we'd have came back on the 9th of September, we would have still, if we did professional development the days that we had teachers under contract up to that point, we would have still been able to meet our hours without changing the schedule beyond that date. So that's a huge advantage. Most schools can't even get close to that. Most schools are already crying out for a waiver on the 1,116 hours. But to us, it won't necessarily change anything. So what we have done is we have taken our calendar, and we have basically over the next 2 weeks up until the 4th and 5th, starting Tuesday, we would open enrollment, and we would start to know if people were going to chase a remote learning opportunity or a face-to-face. We've talked a little bit about, I need to make sure that I'm correct when I'm explaining this to you. We've talked a lot about virtual setting, and we cannot offer what is by definition a virtual setting. The E2020, that option that we talked about, the state will not fund us for that unless the student comes face to face. So they would have to be in our building with our teachers for us to get any funding from those kids. So we can't let them work on E2020 independent study at home and receive any funding. And part of that is they do have virtual schools set up throughout the state. We could add a virtual school to our district in the future, but the application process takes place in January, February, and so obviously we missed that for this year. So the two options are actually remote learning and face-to-face. And that face-to-face could be some hybrid, not every day, or half days or whatever. We could do that kind of model, but the learning's either going to be remote or person to person. There are limitations on that remote learning as well. The students must have the same assessments as their face-to-face peers. They must log all the time, and basically they have to log the full 8 hours. In our case, it's 410 minutes, but we have to log that. The parent has to sign and turn that in, and we have to keep a record of that time. They have not said if we do some hybrid model, but I believe if we do a hybrid model where they come, say, juniors and seniors come Monday, Tuesday, freshmen and sophomores come Thursday, Friday. If we do some model like that, the time when they are working on their projects at home would still have to be logged. They have not been clear if you're in a hybrid model, if they would wait, because the student is getting face-to-face, if they would count that time. But by the definition of what they've given us, I think the parents would have to log the time students were working as well. So that hampers a lot of the things that we can do. So our proposal, and this is from the admin team, and we, what we think we need to be able to open up. As you remember, we were originally supposed to start on the 13th, and the governor's order was to move to the 9th. In talking, there are going to be there's a lot of processes. I mean, just for instance, we've been working through the day. We start at the morning and we say, what questions are we going to have come up along here? But temperature checks. When everybody enters the building, they have to have their temperature checked. We have 30 touchless thermometers. We will distribute them to all the buildings, but we're going to have to come up with the exact procedure that says, this number of students come in this store and are checked by this person every morning. And then the next 2 grades or whatever will come in this store and be checked by this person. And that procedure's got to be pretty exact. Scott is working on a logarithm sheet that as they come through, they can check them off if they pass, and they can record a temperature if they don't pass the temperature check, and then temperature for a recheck after 5 minutes if they may have ran to school or whatever. So that procedure's coming along, but getting that detailed with every student is very complicated. So we definitely need additional time to get that all prepared. And that's not even starting to touch the academic part of moving to competencies from when we have been in basically a standard-based model for education. So our proposal would be that we push it back. It's actually 2 weeks, but that would give us 12 days of professional development working with our staff. It would give them 1 day, work day, and then the students would come on the 27th of August. And we talked a little bit about waiting until that Monday, but we felt like having the kids come for the full day, full week for the first time in 6 months, that would be overwhelming. And we thought for the teachers, if we could start and have a couple of days where they could work on procedures and the things that they need to do, then anything that they'd have a little bit of time over the weekend if they had to make adjustments, or if we had to have meetings to get things figured out on how we were going to fix anything that isn't working well. So that's our proposal. Obviously it's open. I counted the days. This would give us, we would still have built into our schedule an additional, computer's a little slow, I want to say almost 7 days, 6.98 days. So it would be, this is a very doable schedule. And then the rest of the year could finish on time. I did put in there first quarter, I did shorten it by a week and push back parent-teacher conferences and that stuff a week, but everything, only first quarter would be adjusted, and most of the adjustments take place in August and September. So that is our recommendation. And we also went through and came up with a brief schedule of what we felt like those days moving forward would be. And so we would have online enrollment from the 28th through the 4th and 5th, which would be the enrollment days. We're probably not going to have person-to-person enrollment, but we will have those days available where people can get, we'll have all hands on deck to answer questions, and that kind of thing for enrollment in there. So by the 5th, we should have hard numbers. I say that we have some parents that do nothing with enrollment and bring their kids and drop them at the door on the first day. That has happened historically. We don't get new students to the district, people from outside, but we do have some of our people that we know are coming. They don't enroll prior to the first day. Then we would have our mentor days, and then we would start our professional development day. The district is required to do a certain number of, standard professional development that is required. They've added an additional component for dyslexia, which is very good, but it just adds to the requirements that the districts have to do. So the first day is going to be district level required trainings, and there will be time for the buildings to do some individual, but again, we're not going to bring large groups of people together. We don't want to take any chances on, having an outbreak before we get started. So we will try and do as much of that remotely as possible. And then on days 2, 3, 4, and 5, we will have the subcommittees are going to do some training and educating on their areas. So the social emotional subcommittee will speak, the physical health subcommittee will speak, the operations and logistics, transportation, so that all of our employees would be able to have an understanding of how the whole system is working together. Then the second week would be mostly, it would be broken down much more, but the individual teaching groups and PLCs, they would get together and they would be scheduling all of their lessons and how they're going to test these competencies and how they're going to use the rubrics that were in the document that came from the state, how that's going to adapt, how they're going to share across grade levels and subject areas, the lesson plans so that people can be on board. There will be opportunities for training. We have new staff that will need training on technology and all of that, but that they'll be setting up the plan that day. Then the following Monday or Tuesday, we should be in a place where we can get finalized on what lessons and how they're going to go. The first 2 weeks in the plan, the navigating change document from KSDE, basically it says learning new procedures and finding out what gaps students may have had from last year. So starting on that second week, which would be Monday the 17th, we may start to screen students. This would be if a student is on an IEP and needs to be tested or something like that. But also we could bring in individual students and do some like title reading screenings so that if they're going to need additional services, we would be able to provide that. And we'd be able to figure out so that we could set up our groups as much as possible. On Wednesday, the 26th, that's the day before this starts. That would be a teacher work day. Each building will do what they need to do, but it is possible that they may, over that week, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, they may spread out and they may bring in small groups of students so that they can have a chance to see the building. We're thinking especially the littles, that's something that they're going to need to be able to come and see where their classroom is and some of that stuff. So while we can't do a back to school night and have everybody just come willy-nilly, we may have some of that going on as well. And then we'd have the first 2 days of school, and then we would have a couple days that weekend to recoup, recover and make plans and adjust our plans moving forward. Then we're working on documents right now. This is expectations, and there will be expectations for walking in the hallway. There will be expectations of, all of these different things. But what we started to do was we put together expectations for the face-to-face reopening. And that means if you choose a full-time face-to-face or a hybrid face-to-face, these are going to be the things that we want you to be doing. So there's things that students will do at all times, things that they do at home before they come that is their responsibility, what they'll do during student transportation, what they will do after they arrive at school, what they will do while they're generally at school, lunch, recess, and outdoor activities. And we're trying to come up with guidelines for each of those so that because kids do really well if they know the expectations. If the expectations are left wide open, then they do whatever kids can come up with, and they can come up with some pretty amazing things. And then the same thing is for parents. What can parents do to help their students during this time? And so it goes through and it gives advice for what parents can do. And then this, while we will break down much more for our school personnel by job, this is what the parents and the students can expect from school personnel during this time. So that's what, so we're making those expectations. In addition, the next step will also be the virtual expectations for or remote learning expectations for students, and that will look much differently. So we're kind of trying to do that at the same time. So we're working on those as well. So we have finally come to a place where we are. I'm not sure if that's going to come up. It's a little bit slow getting started. Okay, yeah, there it is. Okay, and you guys have had access to this, and I don't know. It's a living, breathing document. This is obviously just a draft, and we have not. I mean, we've talked to a lot of people. We even shared it a little bit at Kaw last week or this week, and just to say this is a possible model of what things will look like. And this is the base plan. It has been shared with the Shawnee County Health Department, and their role is not to approve or deny plans, but they're to help support us. And if they have ways that it could be improved, they will give that feedback.
Carrie, are you showing something on the screen? Sorry, are you trying to show something on the screen? Okay. Because we're still seeing the calendar stuff.
There we go. Okay. It should be coming.
Thank you.
Did it come? All right.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, so what our plan is we know that red and white are on the outsides, and red means we're in a stay-at-home order. We're back to all remote learning, and that's it. There's no we don't have any option. Everybody has to stay at home, and we will do a better job with that than we have ever done, like way better than what we did in the spring, just because we've had time to look at it and things that we can add to it. But that would be if we have major outbreaks in our communities and we have to shut down schools and we can't do anything. Basically, this will be our education purpose. And then white on the far right side, that is basically we return to while we will still practice the skills, making sure that we're staying healthy, washing our hands, and keeping social distance when possible. But it will be normal school, and our Apollo projects for our redesign could start to move forward because we wouldn't have restrictions on students being here or there or whatever. So really where it comes down to being something else is blue, yellow, and green. And blue is our reopening plan with some face-to-face. Our buildings and what it would be is individual cohort groups. And that means those groups of students would be able to get together. They would be able to come face-to-face. They would be in a single space, and they would all be able to stay 6 feet apart in that space. So every classroom is a little different. We may be using the libraries and the gymnasiums as classrooms in that model. And so obviously the number of students could vary, but probably from about 10 in our smallest classroom to 20 in our largest classroom. The idea in this model would be one teacher, a cohort of students, and they would not have interaction with other students. So if the buses would run, we can have about 23 minimum, or 23 is the smallest bus, one person per seat. And that's what the guidance is from KSDE. Everybody's wearing masks, but we can get 23 students on. If the students live in the same household, they can sit in the same seat. So that number could rise a little bit, but that's probably going to be 2 drop-offs per route, approximately. But those kids will wear masks. They'll get their temperature checked when they get on the bus. In fact, we're working on Shannon is in charge of the transportation committee. She's working with Kansas Central. We're working through the logistics, but basically, all the buses will probably have to stay at the school. That way, after they're sanitized, we can make sure that no one gets on them, nobody, and when they come, bus drivers come in to get on their buses, they would have to have their temperatures checked by the lead driver, and then they could go about their day, which again is clunky because our drivers have their route set up where they leave from home and start picking up kids. But this is the world we're in, and we're trying to keep everybody safe. But that also gives us an opportunity to clean the buses after every route. After the kids get to school, then, some kids are going to be coming from, walking in or being dropped off. They will have to go to their own door, get their temperature taken. If they're eating breakfast, Nate and his ladies who have gone above and beyond. When I said we don't know whether you'll have to eat in the classroom, you have to take it to the classroom, if kids can come and grab it and go back to the classroom. And the answer from the food service was, we'll feed the kids. Just give us the rules, we'll make it happen. So, and that's pretty much the way our entire task force has been. Give us the rules and we'll make it happen. The problem is nobody is giving us the rules. So we're making up the rules. We're trying to get this in place. And then once we have the rules, everybody can work more diligently. So in the blue phase, there is a possibility. The most restrictive we have been from the county guidance in this entire thing, we had that stay-at-home order. But even during that stay-at-home order, you could bring in up to a group of 10, keep them 6 foot apart, and be and wear masks, and those things were recommended as well. So we're starting with that. It could be they tell us we can't have more than 10 people in a classroom. We have enough space and enough personnel that we could do that. We could bring in every kid, spread them out in a group of 10. Or the state could say you have to reduce your capacity. We talked about this once before. It would not be a one size fits all, because if they said you have to reduce your number of students by 50%, for us, we would have very small small groups, very small, and it would not be a problem at all. But the same 50% at Topeka High, they still couldn't probably spread their kids out 6 foot. So, but if they did have us reduce that down, we would try to allow our youngest students to come as much as possible. And if we had to reduce and have some people come alternating days or, 2 days a week, we would try and leave that to the older kids. And the reason being the little kids are the ones that are suffering most socially and emotionally by not having interaction with their peers. So, and that would be, they are the group that if by 3rd grade, if you have not caught up, your chances of catching up the gap just starts to widen. So we would want to make sure that we're doing that as well. But right now, we would limit it to the 6 foot distance, everybody wearing masks, and a single cohort, groups no larger than 20. And there are 2 thresholds that we're trying to maintain. That interaction where you would not have interaction at school with more than 25 people total, meaning your teacher, your para, the students in your class, and possibly someone who has to come in and observe, things like that. And then the second threshold is 50 people. And so when we look at, we don't want anybody to interact with more than 50 people, that's when we move to yellow and it starts to open up a little more. So in that blue model, whatever number of students, which could be every student, every student could come and be in a cohort less than 20 and be at school. Now we're calling it, we've started calling it Little House on the Prairie, or I have called it Little House on the Prairie, because what it will be is that teacher is going to facilitate learning for that group of students. Okay. Now that doesn't mean at the high school, that doesn't mean the algebra teacher is not going to give a lesson electronically, but the students being there, being able to interact, being able to ask questions, and have a qualified educator with them running it, that's the model that we're looking for. So they would not interact with other groups. Everything would be scheduled from bathroom breaks and all. And yes, they can go outside and they can get exercise, but there wouldn't be any shared spaces. We wouldn't go from room to room. You would stay in that. Your learning would take place very remotely, but you would have a cohort group to interact with socially and go from there.
Hey,
So
Carrie,
then,
quick question.
Yes.
You just want to make sure I'm clear. So you're suggesting that the maximum number of people, students, teachers, paras, whatever it may be, in a classroom at any one time would be 25?
It would be less than 25. You would never have, and it's probably not even going to be that in most cases, because most of our classrooms won't hold 20 people 6 feet apart. A lot of them will be 10 to 12, but we do have some bigger spaces where we may have a larger number.
Okay, is that shown on this sheet? Maybe you could scroll down some. Maybe I'm just not seeing it.
Let's see.
Yeah, if you, as you speak to this, if you could just scroll down to make sure that we're seeing it on online.
Yeah. Okay, right here
Okay.
on blue.
Okay, got it.
Let me see if I can make it a little bigger. I think I can make it a little bigger. And show a little more. So all students are allowed at school within contained groups 10 to 20 as the classroom allows, meaning the classroom would have to allow them to maintain their social distance. And that's why we don't have a set number. And it could be 8 or it could be 6 if that was the appropriate number for a classroom and a cohort group. So,
yep. Thanks for the clarification.
Okay, and then as we move to yellow starts to open it up a little bit. You would still stay with your cohorts And so you would be in your cohorts, but we would try to get you to your move around the building. So like maybe not every day, but you would see your Algebra 1 teacher in the algebra room. That group may go to math, and they would be with the math teacher, or they may go to shop or science, where those classrooms are set up specifically to teach skills that you can't just do in any classroom. So yellow, while you still stay in your cohorts, and there would be limited interaction, there could be some interaction between groups, like passing periods. It is possible that you could, have 2 groups in the hall at the same time. We're not going to use lockers, so there won't be that exchange. It's very funny. All of the stuff that we were told we had to do for school safety when somebody bringing a gun to school was the biggest threat, are like, no, don't even do that. We have to move to not less interaction between groups. So it's a completely different look at what school's going to be. But they could, elementary teachers, the special teachers at this point could take the groups, so you could have interaction. Those teachers could take groups outside, or to the gym, and so they could have interaction with multiple teachers. That raises the number a little bit. It does put a little bit more exposure to the specials teachers, especially at the grade schools. We would have to limit maybe how many classes they could see in a day to try and keep their number under 50, but it would be something that they could do. And again, it could be 5 classes if it's 10 per class. Then when we move to green, the green model would be everybody wears a mask, but they go about their regular schedule. So there would be no large group interaction. We would still keep the number under 25 where at any point in time. So there would be some classes like band, for instance, or something like that, where we may not be able to put the full band together at that time, but we would have the ability to go about your schedule within your wearing your mask, keeping your social distance, but you would be going between groups. Okay. So that obviously is when you're exposing yourself to a lot more people. And then, so that would be the green model. And then of course, white would be, we're open up fully. In yellow is where for activities, we would do exactly what we're doing now, where the people keep their distance. They, work outside as much as possible. They wear masks and all of that when possible, or when it's not possible to keep that 6-foot distance, or they're indoors. And then green would be when you start to have activities following the new CASHA guideline that came out yesterday or the day before. So that is the model, and it is, this is working with Shawnee County Health Department, the schools in Shawnee County, and talking to the other districts, other league schools, and what they're doing. And this is our version of being able to do this. Now, in my opinion, we don't have to make any determination on where we're starting school. It would be very beneficial to the teachers that on the 10th, when we have our board meeting to approve the budget, and we would have that regular board meeting, that we could come back on the 11th and say, this is our anticipated, on the 27th, we anticipate starting in this color, this status. But that doesn't need to be made until then. The process because we're going to have a process for every one of these, And that's what we need to be working on in the next 3 weeks. But when the teachers come back and are digging in, it would be nice to be able to tell them when they, that night or the first day they come back, we have professional development and we do all of that. Then on the next day, well, we'd have the board meeting that night. The next day we could say, this is the status we believe we're going to start. And then that way, obviously it can change. So then I know we talked a little bit about what determines when we move from one color to the next. And talking with Shawnee County Health, and again, I haven't had as much of an opportunity to talk with the Pot County Emergency Management and Health Department, but we do have a meeting scheduled for the 30th for all the schools so that we can talk and they can look at our plans and we can have that interaction as well. But Shawnee County all summer has done a weekly school-specific health meetings, and those have gone on. And here in the last couple of weeks, we've had 2 a week. So it's very helpful as we make plans on if somebody does get exposed, what our flow chart is going to look like, and that's what we're working on with them. But if we could come back out on the 11th and be able to tell them which status we were starting in, that would be so we don't have to make any decision on that today. We really need to talk about the calendar and what it's going to look like, and then also what. And remember, the remote learning, that is going to be available to anyone. That's going to be an option for anyone. It is not going to be what we had before, but what it might be is the student actually is there just as we are. We're all members. So reading is from 8:30 to 9. And so from 8:30 to 9, the student remotes in and becomes part of the class. And then they work for 30 minutes at home with mom or dad or whatever. And then at 10:30, they do math. And so they need to remote back in. So in that model, you could, mom or dad or whoever would track what they were doing each of the 410 minutes of the day, and then they'd be able to turn that in.
That's what I was going to say, Carrie, quick question. Is there any reason why, so you got students in the classroom from 10 to 10:50 in a math class. There shouldn't be any reason why a student couldn't use Zoom or Google or whatever and just log in just like we are today and attend a class, right?
Yes. And that would be our hope. We're also, we did write the grant to try and get cameras where the student would be able to watch and have, it's basically a wide angle. They'd be able to see everyone there and they'd be able to follow exactly what, the teacher's doing and all of that. So that will take some time to get up and rolling. But as far as individual camera, and we've talked, these are details that, yes, Michael, that's a great question. And I don't know exactly what it's going to look like, but yes, that is something we have talked about. And even if you had a para that was managing the interaction part, so, the teacher could be up teaching, and then if the student had a question, they could type it in, and then that para could say, when it was appropriate, could say, hey, we have a question, and, something like that would be a good model as well. If the number of students that are remote learning, if that number climbs enough, that may be one of our cohort groups. If you get to 10, that would be a cohort. And so then you could dedicate a teacher specifically to helping that group. And that would be fitting as well.
Yeah, I hope that we're looking at the opportunity and suggesting that students who work remote attend classes at the same time as those that are in person, face to face versus, okay, send me the classroom instruction or assignments. I'll get it done whenever.
Yeah, and
I would hope that we're holding them to the same level of accountability and attendance as those that are actually on site.
Michael, not only are we expecting that, looking at it from a high school perspective, exactly, that has to be the model. There really isn't any other way for us to be funded for those students. If they're not attending class, and because they're going to have to pass the same assessments as the kids that are in class. So they're going to need every bit of instruction. Now, we are talking about having our teachers record their lessons so that even if a student couldn't be there for whatever reason, a doctor's appointment, whatever, that lesson would still be available and they could look at it at a later date. Or if you're studying for a test and you're like, man, I'm not very good at this, I can go back and watch Tuesday's lesson on this and refresh before I take my test.
That's fine, but the expectation would be if I have class from 9 to 9:50, you better be online and on the Zoom meeting or Google, just like anybody else.
Yes.
This is Adrian. I mean, I agree. The expectation should be the same. I don't disagree with you, Michael, but having experienced working from home since March while also virtual schooling, we have the best internet we can get. And so, if kids are going to be, which is awful, by the way. So just to be clear. So, when you're bouncing back and forth between meetings and I'm also working on home, which is mostly hours of Zoom every day, it's incompatible to have two people on video at the same time. So I would really appreciate, the flexibility to still hold accountable and those expectations. But I love the recording idea just in case there's a delay or, I have a critical meeting from 10:50 to 11:30 and, my two children and me can't all be on video at the same time. It's just not possible. So I won't get into the details. I know you're thinking through those things, but I just want to say I agree about the accountability, but we have to understand there has to be a little bit of flexibility there. And while I have the microphone, I might take one more quick comment just to backwards on the phases. I'm curious if we could tentatively decide on a phase today. I agree we don't have to make the final decision. We can see what the next few weeks hold. But for me, if we're asking parents to enroll, within the next week and a half, I think we need to give them some information about what to expect when they come back, or if they're choosing to remote or virtual, and maybe, that will help influence their decision on which they feel most comfortable with. I don't see why we wouldn't start in blue as the most strict, in person. And then if we feel like cases are going down or whatever triggers going into yellow, we can make that decision. But it's really difficult to start at a yellow or a green phase and then backtrack, so I think if you set the strictest expectations up front for health and safety requirements, then we can always loosen them, but going backwards is going to be really difficult for kids in person. So there's my thoughts. I'll move back. Thank you.
Okay, and I want to say this too. It does change a lot between elementary setting and a high school setting as well. And, Michael, I think as you look at this and you're talking about it, I'm envisioning you're talking about high school kids that need to be on in person. And I agree. And Adrian, when you're talking too, I think you're looking at it a lot as little kids. They can't sit in front of a screen for hours and hours at a time. And so there has to be some balance there. But the expectation would be that you have to be, it would be more like an online college course. If you don't log in and come to lecture when it's there at high school, then in college you're not going to pass the class. And that should be more the way it is at the high school. But at the grade school, again, it's going to have to be a body of work shared between the teacher in staff and then going there.
I know you touched on this, but what's the difference between the funding requirements between high school and grade school kids? You mentioned something about it's going to have to be where kids, a high school remote in at the same time during class for us to get credit for those students. What's the difference between that in grade school?
There really isn't any difference in the funding, but the expectation, I mean, an elementary kid, mom and dad or whoever they're staying with and doing their remote learning, they are going to have to sign a waiver saying this gets them, this is how much time they spend on class time, and then this is how much time they spent working on their own. And that number needs to be 410. That's going to have to be the expectation. And that's a lot for especially elementary kids. Because if you think about it, our 410 minutes at an elementary, there's a lot of that is going to the bathroom as a group and walking to the gym and going to recess. And so, but that 410 minutes would be the expectation. And it doesn't matter whether you're a high schooler or a elementary kid, whatever you're not getting in class online, you're going to have to get the rest of it and have your mom and dad sign off that you've completed it. So, and here's an example. If I mean, in a math class, you've done a lesson, but you don't quite get it done by the end of the hour. So the next day you finish that lesson, the first 5 minutes, and then you give them, 45 minutes or 50 minutes to work on problems and ask questions. That would not necessarily be a model where the student had to be logged in. They could log off and they could do the same thing. And the next day when they come back, theirs is complete, everybody else's is complete. And, so, and homework, there's going to be homework, and that's one advantage to the remote learning is you could start doing that homework, immediately. We do need to make, and these are a couple of things about remote learning that we need to make clear. We think that, and our league, everybody in our league is doing this as well, but if you are remote learning, we're assuming that's because you're trying to limit your exposure and keep your family safe. So we would say that it is there, you cannot participate in any extracurriculars. And the main reason for that is we don't want someone to use us as some kind of, like academy for sports where you come and play sports, but you go home all day and, have some remote setting. I just think that should be the expectation. So, and I think that's pretty clear. The second one is we think that the people that are going to do virtual learning, we're going to put together just a application, not an application, just when you have to fill this out and you have to understand because it's not just going to be you get your assignments and you submit them back. We can't be funded for that. And so I think we need to explain that to parents that's what the expectations are in the 410 minutes. And they would have to fill that out and acknowledge all the parts because we don't want someone, there's 10% of any group that will try and work the system or whatever, or there's 2%. But there may be some people out there that are trying to, not look out for their own best interest or not really going to seriously consider all of the things and just say, this is what we're going to do. I don't want someone to make that decision. I don't want someone to make this decision because if my kid does remote learning, I think I don't have to get up and get them to school, which could be a driving factor for some people. So we have that. They need to understand the requirements are all the stuff and the amount of time they have to do is equivalent. And everything still has to be completed on time. I think we need to make sure that those things are in place. Does anybody, and you guys, this is a lot. This is unbelievable amounts of hours of time from our faculty and staff putting together what we have come to at this point. So, but I want each of you to take an opportunity Kim, with your permission, and give your thoughts on framing everything for us so that our administrators can make decisions based on what the board wants. Because in between and there's going to be lots of things that come up, and we just want to make sure that we're on phase with you. I know we were talking a little bit about what phase to start in and all of that. The one thing that I can say, and I'm very excited, I haven't checked this morning yet, but Pot County and Shawnee County yesterday on the matrix, the KDHE matrix, metrics for new cases, hospitalizations, and deaths, both of the counties that we have schools in are in all three metrics are moving down. Now, moving down is good. It doesn't say we will continue to do that. It doesn't say that we aren't high, but moving down. But that bodes well. And to me, those are the kind of things we'll have to look at. We will have to be in communication with the health departments of both counties, but we'll also one size doesn't fit all. We are going to have to do one size fits all in Kaw Valley. We're not going to go in separate directions following this county's order or this county's order. We as a district will decide what's best. We will follow any legal mandates, but we will do, and we will make that decision, and it will probably be some hybrid of, comparing what Wamego High School is doing and what Topeka High, Topeka West, 501 might be doing. Because we are much more like Wamego, but we're in the proximity of Topeka High and Topeka West. So we have to take all of that into account. One additional thing I wanted to mention, and this is kind of aside, and then I want each of you as a board member to be able to share your feelings and your opinions on all of this. But there are Sparks funds, and I don't know if you guys remember, but as part of the first stimulus package, the counties were sent, some of the money was given to governors specifically to deal out as needed. And then there were additional monies that were sent to the counties, and the counties were to divide that up between cities, the county, and the schools within their county. So we are putting together a proposal for Sparks funds that will go through Pot County. And Pot County has said the way they are doing it, every school districts can apply directly. They have to apply in tandem with their city. So we're sending our stuff to the city of St. Mary's, and then they will send the proposal on to the county. We can do two things. What we're doing is money that we have already spent since March 15th to clean our buildings and offer remote learning and all of that. That we've accounted for all of that, and we've submitted it. And then we also have the stuff that we're going to spend between now and December. We've asked for money there. We don't know for sure that we will get this, but the list of things that we are getting, a lot of cleaning supplies, a lot of technology. I did put in for the possibility that we may have to hire additional custodians, and the possibility that we may have to hire 2 CNAs, which would be nurse aides, to help. Since we have 4 buildings and we only have 2 nurses, this would get us at least a certified person in each of the buildings. We don't know if we will get that money, but it may be something that we are going to look at. So I wanted to mention that as well. And then Kim, if you would like to,
Yep.
Give us your thoughts.
Okay. Jody, do you want to get started giving your thoughts?
I think that Carrie and the staff has got a good plan in place. I'm all right with the start date. that they came up with. Just have, they've worked their butts off, and I think they're going to get more questions answered as they get into this, or more answers why they get into this, and they're doing a fabulous job. I just know by going, everybody's wanting to get going. Everybody wants to get a date when school's going to be. It's evident by the park and the pool the last 3 days. I mean, that place has been packed, and I know personally with my kids, especially my youngest one, I'm really worried about her, because being at home is not good for my kid, and she needs to be around other kids and teachers and learn. And I'm really worried about the long-term effect on her. So it's important for my family to get going and get back on track. And as you guys all know, we've all had the coronavirus already. So we had to deal with that, but we've moved on. And I think the district's got a good plan. So that's basically all I got to say. I'm ready to get started on the 27th or 28th, and I think we need to get people a date so they can look forward to it, and hey, we got something that's true and we can get going. So that's all I have to say.
Okay, thank you, Jody. Michael?
Well, first of all, I want to thank everybody on the call for all the work that you guys have done and continue to do. It's great stuff. There's so many things that could change within a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and you guys have to be prepared for so many different things. And I know how tough that is, but I first of all, I appreciate what you've done and what you continue to do for us. The August 27th date makes sense to me. Giving you guys a little more time to prepare for what you have to prepare for, a lot of the unknown yet in the next several weeks. I understand that we really can't make a call yet on the status that we would begin school with. I get that. The sooner we can communicate that, obviously, to the parents and the district patrons, the better, but I get it. I really think we're starting, although we did a lot of great work, given we didn't have time to prepare for what happened last several months ago. We're starting at a deficit. Our kids have missed out on so much, even though we did the remote learning. The kids, this is nothing against anybody in any of those buildings. They got maybe 20% of what they could have got face to face. I know my kids are starting now at a deficit and have a lot to make up. I'm very concerned about that. That's why I think it's so important to get them back to school in a safe environment. I really don't want, as a parent, my kids doing the remote thing, because it's not as efficient, it's not as effective as anything face-to-face. Just like me working from home for the last 3 months for Hills. I think there are some things that I do very efficiently and very effectively, but the face-to-face meetings that we had, you can't replace that. I don't care if we're on the phone or on the remote Google calls. There's still an element that you're not seeing nonverbal gestures. You're not seeing a lot of different things that's going on behind the scenes. So the more that we can replicate the in-class experience for those who are choosing to do the remote learning, the better. I do understand the limits, the bandwidth concerns brought up earlier, but having my kids, your kids, everybody's kids online at the same time that they're colleagues are in the classroom face to face, learning the very same thing that they are, hearing the very same thing that they are, I think is very important if we can figure that out. So once again, it's a tall task in front of us. You guys have handled it very well to this point, and thank you for all you do.
Thank you, Michael. Alan?
Let me come up here.
Yeah, that's probably as easy as any.
I'm gonna sit. It might be- Again, I'll kind of echo what some of the others have said concerning the staff's work on trying to pull everything together and pulling a plan. I really appreciate the fact that we are going to go in person and try to bring everybody back that wants to be back. And I think that's key to a lot of this for me is we know from the CDC that transmission rates among children and kids getting this virus is much less of a risk to kids than it is to adults. We know that. We know the transmission between kids and from kids to teacher is low compared to the rest of the population. And there's risks with everything. And it is a risk, and it's something that we should certainly try to mitigate. But we know what's going to happen to kids. It's not even a risk. We just know what's going to happen. If we don't have in-person school, there's going to be social problems. There's going to be emotional problems. There's going to be an education learning gap with these kids. All those, it's not even up to debate. Those things will happen. It's just not as good as a learning environment to learn remotely as it is in person. And so I agree with the other board members on that, certainly. So having said that, there are risks, especially to kids with pre-existing conditions, with teachers. There was a teacher in our meeting the other day that expressed a pre-existing condition that he had, and it's serious, and the risks are higher for folks like that. That's why I think not only for students, but for teachers, especially like the ones with that are higher risk, we do provide the remote learning opportunity for them to keep them safe, because I think that's what the real risk here is high risk kids and high risk teachers. But for everybody else, in my view, I'm in favor of making school and the school experience as normal as we can. Otherwise it's not about any one particular kid, but just as a group of students, the detriments and the negative things that are going to happen, the further that we get away from normal school, the worse it's going to be in terms of the downside effects from this thing. So I'm not one that's going to sit here and say that it's safety regardless of the cost, because I think the costs matter. That's my 2 cents. So again, I'm fully in favor of the August 27th start date. I think that's great. I do also have questions about sports and how much of this makes sense if we're limiting them to a certain amount of groups, but then after 3:00, the groups are going to be bigger. They're going to be tackling each other and sweating on each other and yelling and all that stuff. So in the end, for me, I want school as normal as possible to provide kids all the opportunity that they could otherwise have. And for those at high risk, I think the remote option for teachers and kids makes the most sense. That's all I have.
Thank you, Alan. Michelle, are you with us? You're welcome to take your turn. Yep. Carrie, do you show Michelle being with us?
I don't right now.
Okay, we'll come back and see if she comes on. Adrian?
Well, I would also echo what other board members have said about the incredibly complex and adaptive challenge, our world has been given, and you as administrators and teachers have been given. I know that you are working furiously and giving a lot of thought to what is best for our district and our students. So I really see that, evidence through your planning and, doing your best to give the information you have at hand. I understand that, and I thank you for it. For me, health is, kind of the utmost importance. While I also understand that, we have different comfort levels with the risk, of contracting the virus or the spread of that. So I think the plan that you've outlined is responsive to that. I thank you for the remote option for those who either are at high risk or are worried about the risk in general, because there are a lot of unknowns still about the impact on healthy folks, about this virus. So I think that that is a real concern. Alan mentioned it a little bit, but I didn't really hear how we would be offering options to staff and, as we're approaching enrollment and the date to come back. So I'm curious, in further conversation, if a staff person is at high risk or they don't feel comfortable being in an in-person setting, what are we offering to our staff? And how does that proportionately then impact, the number of families and students who choose remote learning versus being in person? Are we going to have a staffing, imbalance in one way or the other? So I don't think that has been, at least in this call. I'm sure you've had conversations outside of this call about that, but I'd like to hear more. So, I think we're on the right track. Like I'll just reiterate earlier, I don't see why we wouldn't start the most strict, in-person offering. I am fully supportive of making it a little bit more clear that we would intend to start in blue, even with cases declined. I think that the strictest in-person offering, while also holding to, Alan's point, to try to make it the most normal and meet the needs of kids and let them see each other and their teachers, if that's what their family's choosing, then, it's going to be difficult to go backwards, or, we're starting at a more risky environment, that then would not continue to hold down the cases like we're hoping to see in the coming weeks. One more quick comment about the calendar and the start date. I mean, if that allows you enough time to feel like you have answered these questions, you've had time to then adapt after the enrollment numbers or the staff decisions, then I will support the board's decision on the start date. I also am supportive of an extended start date to move into the beginning of September. So if you want to, like I said, I will support the majority's decision on the start date. I know you've given it a lot of thought, but I also think we should give ourselves some flexibility if something goes awry between now and, let's say mid-August or something, that you could extend that. And then my final comment would just be, I know we're in a time of change and we aren't sure, but I'm really excited to hear that you're going to be communicating with parents. Next week, I think even if you don't have all the answers or the final answers, I think we need to communicate more with the families. So that's another reason why I wanted to, recommend the blue, because I think it gives parents some extra tools, as they're deciding what makes sense for their family when they're enrolling in a week and a half. So again, thanks for all your work. I know this is incredibly challenging, and I'm here to support you in any way I can.
Thank you, Adrian. John?
Okay. Well, I concur with most all the comments. I should say all the comments. I'm completely on board with what Carrie and the staff and the admin team and have presented. I do think it's very important that we do everything to hit the 8/27 start date, because our parents need to have babysitting plans and transportation plans and everything else. And that changes if we change our date. So now, that being said, if there's an outside influence like the virus goes the wrong way and we're forced to do something different, we have to do that. I think we have the plans to do that. The only comment I have is I've heard too many people use remote learning and virtual learning as being synonymous. And I think it's important for us to point out it's not, because remote means they're supposed to be doing just what the classroom is doing, only they're in a different location. So if we let a constituents get by with saying, well, you guys are doing not enough virtual learning, well, you're right, because we're not doing any. And make sure that's clear in people's mind. Other than that, I hope everybody has a good day.
Thanks, John. Carrie, I'm still not showing Michelle. Are you?
I was gonna look one more time.
Okay.
Nope, I am not.
Okay. All right, then I'll go ahead and go. I too want to say thank you. The work that goes into trying to figure out how to handle this situation is very time consuming, and I appreciate the work that everybody's done. I have no doubt that regardless of if someone is doing a remote learning or an in-person learning, that they're going to get the best education, just as they always have in our district. I think our most important piece after that, obviously, is to provide a safe environment. I know, Carrie, that I sent a series of questions just based on some experiences that we've had for things for people to think about. Just a couple comments. I know that we right now have like 1.5 nursing staff for the 4 schools. And I think that we may definitely want to consider at least increasing the nursing hours for the 1 staff, or looking at bringing on another part-time nursing staff, because I think that there's definitely a possibility that if there is someone who is having symptoms and experiences, you don't want all your other staff having to deal with that. And I think that we need to have nursing staff available to handle that. And so if we're splitting people between the 4 buildings, that may be kind of difficult to do. You had mentioned the thermometers. Carrie, I'll just tell you, it takes a minute for those thermometers to set themselves. So you might actually want to have 2 or 3 at each of the locations, because if not, you're going to be waiting for the thermometer to reset before you can take the next person. Just from our experience, that's been a real nightmare. And we're only dealing with about 25 people 4 times a day, and we have like 5 thermometers just for that. So you might want to grab some additional. Carrie, are we providing masks, or I guess just something to think about is who's providing the mask and how are we assuring that they are being cleaned and sanitized so that, you know, it's not walking back and forth from home to school or whatever. And I don't know what kind of things you guys have kind of put in place for that. So that's something maybe to think about. And also with the buses, if the bus driver's taking temperatures and we have a young person who obviously has spiked a temperature and cannot get on that bus, how are we handling that? Because obviously we can't just leave a kid at a bus stop, and there probably isn't going to be a parent there. So are we going to have some extra staff on the bus routes or somebody that can tend to that? So that's just something maybe planning wise that we kind of need to think about. I know I sent you an email just after I had had some contact from some staff that I think maybe over the next couple of weeks, why we're really trying to buckle down on how to make all of this happen and be ready for our start date. Holding off on the redesign meetings so that we're not doing redesign and starting school both at the same time may help them to be able to really focus on getting through all the different questions that we need for making sure that we can get school started on the 27th, as you guys have set out. So I just think that it's an awful lot. The teachers are, I know, working extremely hard, and there's a lot more to be done, but I just think trying to do the 2 things simultaneously is kind of hard to do at this point. And starting school and making sure we're doing it the very best way is probably the top priority right now. So those would be my comments on that. The other thing that I would just ask you, Carrie, just in general, do you think will we need another meeting before August 10th to get more details about the plan that's developing? Or do you think that we just need to kind of take out a chunk of time on that next meeting to get more details about how everything's going to look?
I think it is possible we would need another meeting in between, but until we get the staff back, I don't know. I mean, we want to make sure we get their full input as well. And just
Sure.
I don't think we should set a date, because I don't know if we set a date, then I'll have everybody. We have a lot of people that are wanting to do a lot of work, but you know, they still have stuff that they're finishing on their professional development plan for them to learn about how to do their curriculum. You know, we're doing some professional development right now on the new English curriculum that we purchased and the technology part of that. So I don't want to, I don't know that we'll be able to, if we get to a point where we're like, yes, we're here, we're ready, and we need to go back to the board. I would want to be able to call you and request that, but I don't know that we're ready. I don't think we want to make if the 10th is our deadline, let's let people work with that being their deadline to get you information, instead of putting another date in there and then making people panic that they have to have something ready by then. Does that seem fair?
Yes, absolutely. Couple things, Carrie, can you make sure that you said that somewhere we should be able to find this schedule on the calendar and the chart and everything?
I will make sure everything gets shared with you directly.
Okay.
Sometimes it goes into a folder that you have access to, but it's hidden out there where you don't see it. I will make sure you get an email that says,
okay, that would be great.
Look, because I know we do this in-house all the time, and we start to get used to, well, it's in that folder, so now you can just go to that folder, but that's not the way it works for people that aren't using it all the time. So I will make sure that I get all that to you.
Okay. And I know that several of the board members are parents, so they'll receive all the parent information. But for those of us that don't have a student actively right now, will you make sure that we see the parent letter and things that's going out, or any contact that we're having with the parents, so that we can be prepared for that?
Yes.
And I guess my thought for the special meeting is that maybe, I guess we can see kind of where we're at on the 10th. But I guess I just wanted to see if maybe we needed one between the 10th and when school starts. I guess I just want to make sure as a board that any supplies, resources, and things that the staff need to get off on a good foot, that we're making sure we get them that. Let me tell you, the emotional toll of this is pretty overwhelming. And I'm glad that there's so many of you to spread it all out. But the responsibility, obviously, you've carried a responsibility for keeping kids safe and for getting them educated. But when and if, and we'll just pray it doesn't happen, we start experiencing some cases within the district, it's a tough thing. So I'm, like I said, my experience is just with 12 residents and 22 staff, and knock on wood, so far we haven't had any cases. But just knowing and carrying the burden of making sure that people are safe and that we're doing everything that we possibly can to keep them that way, it's heavy. So I just want the staff to get exactly what they need so that they can feel like they're being supported, being right there on the front lines and having to face it every day.
Absolutely. And you guys, I want to say to the entire redesign task force and the administrative team has not had any time off this summer, and they're on 10.5-month contracts. They've been on call, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week since March 15th. I mean, it's just anytime. And I am to blame, because if I have a question and it's 9 o'clock at night, and I will call somebody and say, I'm thinking about this right now, what do you think? And so I'm guilty of it too. But I know they're taking calls nonstop, answering emails nonstop, all times of day. And so I really want to thank them for everything that they have done. I did want to mention, I had a couple things that I left off that I want to make sure we talk about before we start sharing the information. We also feel, the admin team feels that, if you choose the remote learning option, that has to be at least a 9 weeks or possibly a semester, because we don't want people to be bouncing back and forth. And, and we want to make sure that people are taking time to make a good decision instead of, this seems easy, so I'm going to do it. And then when they don't like it, then want to be bouncing back and forth. And so I want to do that. We want to bring in our classified, and mostly we're talking about paras. They're the people that wouldn't be in for normally every professional development day, and they still won't. But we want to make sure that they're informed and understand, because they're going to have to be making a lot of decisions about kids and stuff along the way. So while they won't work the full time like we were originally planning, we want to make sure that we can bring them in. As to, I think Adrian was talking about what we might be able to offer staff. We're going to try, if we have, it would be great if the number of students we have virtually and the number of teachers that we need to teach virtually match. But we do have some options there. Even, let's say we have more teachers that have health issues than we do students that need virtual learning. There is the possibility that we could hire a sub to manage the class, and the teacher could work from home and still, come in and lecture virtually, remotely, I should say. And then they, and be able to do the lesson planning and all of that. And that is a possibility. Also, we do have we're going to have virtual students that may need some additional help. So if we have paras or people like that need to work from home, or even if they need to come in to special services where it would be a very limited number of people and they could have their own space, and then they could remotely work with students from home. So we will work with them. We can't make any promise that we would be able to accommodate every situation, but we like our staff. We're proud of our staff. We want to keep them around, and anything we can do to accommodate them, we want to do that.
Carrie, do you have a feel? Maybe you mentioned this earlier and I missed it, but do you have a feel for the number of staff that are wanting to work remotely?
It's not very many. On the first survey we did, we sent out a survey yesterday that everybody, all staff, all employees are supposed to return by Monday, so that we can look at it, and they're all supposed to sign it and say whether they can, can't, or are still weighing their decision. So then we would at least be very close to knowing how many.
When you get those results, can you share them with the board?
Yep, I sure will.
Are you in a position now to share any information
I'm on a board meeting.
and those kind of things? I'm sure those are discussions you've had, or is that information that you will get?
Well, as far as extracurriculars, Keisha has given their guidelines out on how to safely do the sporting events that they offer, and they're out there. You can go online and read them. What they haven't said is what the timeline of starting and all of that is going to look like. They're sending a survey to all superintendents, and it's going to talk about when school is starting in your district, and when you think school, maybe when activities should start, when events should start. It might have questions about, crowd and some of those things. But they're sending a survey out to superintendents this weekend. I think it's supposed to be returned by Tuesday, they said. So, because Tuesday they have a meeting for their executive board.
It sounds like from their perspective, they're not saying any kind of recommendation of not have. They're recommending to have them, but with safety mitigation measures in place.
That's the way they released the guidelines of how to do it safely. So to me, it would mean, if they get to the point that they say, yes, we are definitely going, this is how to do it safely. So and whether they've made any, it has been my understanding that they, when they thought the governor's executive order was going to hold, their plan was to hold off just like and follow the executive order, and then that next day would be the start date. So they may have some plan that they're going to stick with that, or they're not going to have any, or you can practice and then just have the events start after that date. I don't know. That'll be.
Some of it may just be based on survey results and district participation.
Mhm.
I mean,
Mm-hmm.
if you don't have,
Right.
you're gonna have to have buy-in from all districts. Right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So I mean, I don't know what that'll look like, but it is there. I do want you to know we have purchased 2 cloth masks for every student, and our thought process was at the end of the day, you'd get a new mask to go home, and you'd wear that back the next day, and during the next day we would try to wash the masks at school and send you home, especially with the littles. That would be our plan. And in term, because I mean, I have seen the mask my son wore and did not take proper precautions to wash it every day. And it is something that has to be done. And we do it at home now much better than we did when we first started wearing masks. We will get additional help for the nurses, and if we can hire, we're looking at CNAs right now as a possibility, and we will probably post that as a possible opening. And that way we could at least have a healthcare helper in each building full time. Adrian said something about, or Kim, I think you said something about dropping the redesign stuff. They will have to. Not dropping it, but putting it on hold. Because this is redesign, and that's the other thing. We are redesigning our redesigned schools now, and it has been really good. Rossville grade is the only one that's moving ahead, that got approval and went ahead and moved. But there's the stuff within theirs they can do in any setting. So it isn't the high schools and their schedules. It pretty much is completely on hold because they're just going to have to block them up and say, these are your classes. This is when they're going to meet. This is who can be there at any point in time. And unfortunately, at least for probably a semester, that's the way it's going to be. So that we will, while we are not going to stop talking about redesign, that won't be our focus until we get all of this off and going and everybody's safe.
And Carrie, you do have some staff that are CNAs, just so you know. You have some para staff that are CNAs currently, so you may be able to utilize them in that position. Lost him.
You're into those roles, and that may be what.
Yeah.
Carrie, you're locking up.
I thought it was me.
No,
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
I had to exit and re-enter.
I thought it was my link.
Did you, and Kim, I think you said we have some staff that already has their CNA that we can utilize, and that we're thinking about that as well. So, and then you had a question about buses. You said there was one thing, and I was like, I want to make sure I mention that. Do you remember what?
Well, I was just, if we have a kid that tests with a high fever at the bus stop, how we're handling.
Oh, yes.
Okay.
And we don't have, that's something we're looking at, and we don't have an answer yet. But our busing may have the bus much stricter than it has been in the past. Meaning you have to wait until your student clears the thermometer check before you leave them at the bus.
That's probably a really good idea.
You know, because we can't put the other students at risk.
Walking up all over the place.
If we have what we think is unhealthy, we can't send our we can't send our personnel home with them. So there may be some restrictions on the bus that are very, you know, just to ride our buses, you have to wear a mask and you have to pass the temperature check. And if you can't do those two things, then for our safety, it may come to that. I'm not saying that we've made a final decision. It has been discussed, but that may be what it ultimately looks like.
Okay.
Carrie, do we know what the threshold to let the kids on the bus would be? I mean, if a kid has a 98.8 fever, I mean, has that been discussed? Is there guidelines for that?
Yeah.
100.4, the initial reading, they can sit and wait 5 minutes and you can retest them. And if it's under 99, they can safely go to school. If it's over 104, that's a fail. 100.4, and that's a fail. And you're probably going to contact parents immediately. They will obviously recheck them, you know, but if they recheck and it's still over 99, it's a fail and we won't be able to allow them to come to school. But that was guidance that was given out, I think, by the CDC way back. We will, of course, update that if we get better or newer information, but that's what they've been telling us to do. And our nurses have done a lot of work this summer, and they're doing a great job as well.
Well, and Carrie, I guess one thing we can always consider is if there's a lot of feedback from parents about having to wait with their kids, you know, we're not, by law, we don't have to provide transportation within 2.5 miles of the school. And so a lot of those bus stops that we're making where the kids kind of gather anyway, at the stops throughout town, I mean, if that's going to be complicated, then we may have to look at that.
But these are strange. Maple Hill people that would like us to come to Maple Hill, now is not the time for us to be expanding our transportation. I mean, not that we wouldn't want to and try and work with Wabunsee, but right now we are going to have enough trouble just getting our kids, you know, to school safely. So we sure don't need to expand that beyond what we have to do.
And Carrie, have we let them know that so that they aren't anticipating that or expecting that? I mean, I know they're having conversation about it, so.
You cut out. I couldn't hear your question.
I just wondered if we've let them know that, because I know they're having conversation about it, have received a couple emails about it. So I guess I just want to make sure that we're real clear with them up front so that they're not expecting something that we just can't deliver at this point. Lost him again.
Yeah, Carrie, you keep freezing up, bud.
One of you guys that are there with Carrie, just let him know we can't hear him at this point.
Kim, the other thing I want to understand is, are we having to add routes or another bus in each town or start earlier?
I can add some of that while Carrie is frozen, if that's okay.
Yeah.
Hi, Shannon. Thank you.
Hi, good morning. So we do not anticipate needing to add routes. I think, well, I think we're looking at 5 and 5 on each side, which is kind of what we thought we would have anyway. What we're looking at, so Kansas Central charges us a route is basically considered anything under 2 hours. So what we think we can do is make a couple of drops. You know, pick up a group of kids, drop them, and then go pick up another group and drop them within the same 2-hour time frame. So we'll still call it a route.
Are they having to start earlier than Shannon?
Well,
day?
it just depends. That's kind of why we're hoping to get enrollment next week going, and then have some transportation questions on there. There may be parents who say, you know, I'm okay with my kid going to school because
Can you all hear me?
We can hear you, Alan.
I can hear you.
Sorry, go ahead, Shannon.
Okay, so we just kind of need to know from the parents. There may be parents who want their kids to attend school because they know they're going to be in color blue or whatever, but they don't want them on a bus. We just don't know yet. So until we see the numbers, it's going to be hard to say what time we'll have to leave. But that is something we're considering, and then also looking at making a plan for those kids who get dropped first.
This is what frustrates parents. Right?
Okay.
Thank you, Shannon.
I'm recording my advice. I'm not sure what is wrong. I think it was a problem, so.
That's okay. Shannon did a great job of giving us the info on the bus routes.
She's good and she's got it under control.
Board members, do you have further questions or comments? Carrie, how about yourself?
Carrie, did our last day of school, did that move out or did that stay the same?
It stayed the same.
Okay.
And we don't have to worry about it if we, you know, the board has the authority over the calendar, so if you want to look at something else, it's not necessary at this time.
Carrie, do you have anything further before we move towards adjournment?
I've already told you guys more than I know. So I
Well, that's reassuring. Board members, do you guys have anything additional?
I guess the only thing that I have left is graduation setup, planning, everything looking okay for Sunday? Is there anything you need from us?
I think they haven't read it, so we do have a contingency plan for, looking at weather, it might be, but we do have a contingency plan where each family would come into the doors of high school building and have the for each individual student. They would exit, family would come in if we were in a storm. But
Carrie, I hate to say, but we're catching out 1 out of every 3 words.
I can address this if you want me to.
Great.
So yeah, we sent out a contingency plan. Travis and I sat down and kind of worked through it because we think the promotions and mine will probably be more in effect than the Ryan's. Right now, it looks like Ryan is probably in the clear to just go ahead as scheduled. Mine, the weather keeps kind of creeping up a little bit. I think we're sitting at around a 20% chance from the NOAA site. And I think Travis and Jen are now sitting at about, 50, 60% chance. Anyways, basically what we're going to do is we're going to work it out to where we'll send out a school reach if we have to make an adjustment. We're going to try and make a call by 5 p.m. Latest the day of. So mine would be 5 p.m. Sunday. Travis and Jen would be 5 p.m. on Monday. And basically what they would do is graduates would come in with their families. They would drive, they would create a line in their vehicles. And we're not going to worry about alphabetical. We're going to make an adjustment just based on who's there. We're still going to live stream. We're going to have the live stream people in there. Everybody in their cars can try and watch on their phones if they can. or whatever. But anyways, they'll line up. They'll start a line from our front door, and they'll kind of wrap around to the side of our building, beside the weight rooms, gymnasiums. And what we'll do is we'll have staff to help usher the people into that front corridor area, and then I will announce their names. They will come up, receive their diploma from the table. The board members, administration will be up there. Say their name. We'll let the family come in with them. They can take a picture, and then as they go up, we'll call another family into what we're going to call the on deck area, which will be the space in between those two doors. They'll be on deck. The other family, after you announce their name, they'll go out. As they go out, we'll announce the other family to come up, and then her family will go out, pull the car forward, and then everybody can kind of continue down that line and continue that process. And we did say if it's sprinkling, we're going to continue on. We said umbrella weather, we're gonna push through. We'll only cancel not cancel, go to contingency plan if it's lightning, extreme weather, etc.
Thank you.
I'm
Hey,
back.
Carrie, what's the board members and administrators, what are we wearing?
The gentleman, we talked a little bit about it. We're going to wear our polos that have the school emblem on them and slacks.
Okay.
And I don't make any decisions about what ladies wear. So whatever they wear will be fine.
I got a quick question. How many board members will be coming to St. Mary's, just so we can come up with a good plan to keep everybody spread out, but include as many as possible?
Ryan, it's Michael. I am.
Michael, John, I have not heard from Michelle.
So we'll plan on Michelle. Anybody outside of those three?
I may be a question mark. I have a funeral.
Okay. So John might be a question mark.
Okay. All right. Well, that's doable. That's going to help us. We can get everybody on the stage, I think, just to make it a little bit more formal and include those board members, so that'll be good.
And Bill Mulligan will be there as a former board member to award his daughter's diploma. Yeah, it's the same for promotion. I have a document, everybody. I'll double check with everybody, but I think it's correct. And Kim, did Kim leave?
Huh?
I think she's on there. She's on mute.
7, both night. 7.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
I got cut off, but I had to pop back on. Thank you, CenturyLink. So, Carrie, I guess my only question, because I still have to completely quarantine and socially isolate, there'll be a way to get in without going through the crowd, correct?
Yes.
Okay, then I will plan to be there at both of them.
Absolutely. Okay.
The other thing I would probably say, if board members bring a mask, just so if kids are walking by you, just to have a mask on, that would be the only time that you would come into close contact potentially with them. Carrie or a board member that feels comfortable will be handing diplomas out. Now, my question is, do we make those kids wear a mask? I'm saying we don't. Ask them to wear a mask as they come through the stage. I think that's a picture opportunity, but I think just want to make sure everybody's on the same page with that, but it may be beneficial for board members to bring a mask, just in case.
We'll follow the policy that's in place across the district, and basically it says outdoors, if you cannot, it is required to wear a mask if you cannot maintain the 6 foot of social distance. So everybody needs a mask, and we do have to need them.
So what about students when they come across the stage? I'm going to say no, but that's just my opinion.
I think that the social distancing guideline is within 6 feet for more than 10 minutes, so I think it's still okay.
Okay. Perfect. Thanks.
For the students to not wear masks.
And so, Carrie, a board member is presenting diplomas.
That's up to you.
Okay.
I will award the diplomas. Ryan's going to be reading the names. We're not having, usually he has students come back or juniors do it. He's going to read them, and I will hand the diplomas if you want me to.
Well,
if you feel comfortable, I have no problem.
Well, and I know that Alan has somebody and he maybe want to hand those out. Are we shaking? My understanding was we weren't shaking hands and doing all that. Is that correct?
That is correct. We're not going to shake hands, and there won't be any receiving lines. And the one thing that we did get from Shawnee County, they said they did approve our plan on for graduation, but they did say the thing they learned from the Shrine Bowl was that everybody will do exactly as they're asked, and people will behave the way you want them to. But when it's over, everybody will get out in the lines. They don't social distance because they're just used to going to the gate, and when they get there, it starts to pile up. So we're going to make an announcement at each of our graduations and promotions to make sure that we don't gather in large groups and that we, exit. And we're going to have ushers, kind of wedding style, release one group at a time so that they don't have to worry about the distance.
Okay. Okay. Board members, anything further? Carrie, anything further?
Nope.
Okay. Agenda item 5531, entertain a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
There's a motion and a second on the floor. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.